Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Benjamin Grove, and I'm here with round two of the CoinFlip Cube League. The members of the Pokemon Cube League Discord server, we drafted a cube this month, and we're playing a tournament with our decks we drafted in the cube. We are here with round two with my dragon deck. If you're just hopping in right now, the CoinFlip cube, the cube that we drafted, is a cube based around the players deciding their own coin flip results. So what ends up happening is cards in this cube like Capturing Aroma, Dual Ball, Lore Ball, Pokeball, those cards end up being bananas, and it also allows some Pokemon that would never see play be really threatening and be really good. So it's one of my favorite cubes because there's just so many great interactions that you would never come up to in another normal game of Pokemon. So just as a reminder, my deck is based around the Altaria from Crimson Invasion, using Draco Melody. Flip a coin, if heads, search a deck for a dragon Pokemon and put it onto your bench. And we're trying to cheat out this Dragonite from Plasma Freeze and this Sandflap Flygon from Primal Clash, and use these guys as just gigantic threats that your opponent has to really answer. In round one, I went up against a really tough, grindy matchup of a spread deck of Fortress and Bronzong. And this time around, I'm kind of going up against, in some ways similar, but in some ways very opposite. There is a lot of spread going on in this deck with Jolteon, Mismagius, and Lantern. But this deck is a lot more aggressive, and there's a lot of really powerful consistency options to get this deck off the ground. So my opponent Guil drafted really great in the item department: 2 Dual Ball, 2 Evo Incense, 2 Order Pad, and there's some really great supporters to help buff up the damage of the attackers in this deck, because while these attackers have low cost attacks at Evolving Thunder at 2, Energy Split at 1, Psychic Pulse at 1, they're definitely a little bit smaller in the damage department. But so I think overall this is a deck that's gonna start swinging fast and will occasionally bring a little bit of a punch to it as well. There are some interesting things that it puts up against my deck as well. For example, this Energy Split Lantern, which does 30 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon that has any energy cards attached, matches up really great into our Unknown Ys. Now, Guil is running some Unknown Ys in his deck too. We have one Unknown Y that helps us bring energy into play from deck. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, search a deck for a Psychic Energy card and attach it to one of your Pokemon with Unknown in its name. So if we end up using Unknown and we just have an energy sitting on it before we can use Celebration Wind Shaman to move it over to my attackers, Lantern is just a real big threat. It puts 30 damage on it, and it's really easily finished off by a Mismagius using Psychic Pulse or a Jolteon using Evolving Thunder. So this deck, I think, poses a really unique challenge for my deck, and I'm excited to show you the game action. So let's hop right into it. Okay. So we start off here, and once again, this is being played on untap. We're a little bit sped up. I call tails, and I believe I win the coin toss here. Yes, I do. So we're going to go first. My first hand I open up, I don't really see a good way to get a turn 2 Draco Melody, so I just go for our Gentleman's Mulligan in this Cube League. There's a Gentleman's Mulligan, which if you don't really like your hand, at no cost, you can just go ahead and take a mulligan, even if you have a basic. And that's kind of been a general Cube community rule, because Cube decks are jank. So this second hand is a little bit better. We've got a good draw supporter and bug catcher. We do have an Altaria in hand. Our opponent's going to go ahead and use a Gentleman's Mulligan as well. Nothing thrilling going on the first turn here, I don't believe. We're just going to attach past from a Regigigas. And our opponent is going to go ahead and pop off a little here, I think. Benches an Eevee and uses Professor Birch's Observations, which is a Shuffle Draw 7. Benches a Mischievous and a Chinchou, and then just goes for a Charge Up and charges a Water into play. So already he's threatening a turn to attack from a Jolteon. Complaining a little bit about his Professor Birch's Observation. We go ahead and Bug Catcher, and that will get us into our turn to Draco Melody with a Comp Search off the Bug Catcher. Comp Search will get a Swoop Teleporter, so we can swoop the Regigigas out of play and replace it with a Swablu. Swoop Teleporter is kind of like Ninja Boy on an item. So we swoop it into Swablu and evolve into Altaria. And then I think about benching this Chatot because he's threatening if he gets a Jolteon into play. He's definitely threatening a turn 2 knockout on my Altaria. I'm thinking about benching a Chatot and attaching energy to it so as to preserve some energy on board. I have a Shaman in hand, so I'm going to be able to start moving energy around once I get my Dragon up and running. But I ultimately decide against benching the Chatot because the supporter rules in this cube are Gen 4 rules. So once you play a supporter, it stays in play. And I can't use Chatot's Lucky Match to get that Bug Catcher back. So I end up just going with an attach to the Altaria and saying, since he attached water to the EV, I'm going to just say he doesn't have the Jolteon out and he's going for a Vaporeon instead. And I go Draco Melody, and I have my pick. Since I've got Grass and Lightning on board already, I'm going to go ahead and get Dragonite, since that's the energy requirements for it. And pass over to my opponent. He top decks an X-Transceiver, and I'm really worried because that could really just get him into a Volkner. And Volkner can get him an Evo Incense and a Lightning Energy that he needs to attack and knock out my Altaria. But he prizes both Jolteons. So with prizing both Jolteons, he goes ahead. At this point, my untap kind of glitched out. So I do kind of have to explain what happened here. He goes for he instead off the Cross Transceiver goes for a Professor Juniper to ditch his hand. That gets him into a Ralts, an Unknown Y, a Order Pad for an Evo Incense for a Vaporeon, and I think eventually he'll get a Lantern in play too here. Yes, we see the evolved into Lantern. Oh, he also plays a Sabrina's Gaze, which is going to shuffle my hand away. Luckily, I still end up with a pretty good hand, with Switch and Shaman still in hand. So he goes ahead and gets the Jolteon, but he undevelops it, puts it back in his hand, and is going to retreat into Lantern. Since he has the Thunder Mountain in play, he can use Energy Split with 0 lightning energy on it and do 60 damage to my Altaria. I rip a Quick Ball off the top, and that means I am really going in and attacking. I'll get Unknown Y and use its Pokemon power to pull a Psychic from deck, attach Psychic for turn, Celebration Wind all the energy to Dragonite, and switch him in. And then my opponent scoops. The Dragonite attacking turn 3 is a big presence, and so it just kind of happens. This time around, we start Celebi. We have a Lily in hand. Really a solid start again. We don't like to see Dragonite in the opening hand, but what can you do? We do have Night Teleporter. Eventually, we can throw the Dragonite back into deck with Night Teleporter. And we go ahead and get started. He'll start with attach return, and he'll go for a charge up, but then we'll remember we're playing modern Pokemon rules, so he cannot attack, so he'll throw that back in. I'll go ahead and draw Teammates off the top. Not a great draw. I go ahead and use Forest Breath on Celebi, and I'm debating whether or not to use Night Teleporter right now to Lily for a fresh 8 or Lily for 3. I go ahead for the Lily for 3, hoping that I'll be able to draw something good. Once again, I'm stuck in a weird position with the Chatot where I can't bench it for a Lucky Match because that Lily stays in play, so I just go ahead and pass. And my opponent, he just has it. He has the Cross Transceiver for the Giovanni Scheme and knocks out my Celebi. Off of a couple mulligans that we both have, I actually end up, I think, having 3 mulligans here. We go into game 3. And in game 3, I open up with a Swirlix and not much else in my opening hand, and my opponent gets 3 extra cards. So not seeming great. I do go first, though. Off the top, another energy, not great. We'll just attach pass and hope for something off my bug catcher. My opponent's going to play down a dual ball, get a Curlia to hopefully get into a Ralts for trade, or Ralts into Curlia for trade, a Misdreavus as well, and an Unknown Y. Oh, so he had one of those needs, sorry, in an Unknown Y. We'll get an Energy Arc to pull some Lightning Energy out of the deck, and go ahead for a Roller Skater to draw 4. So my opponent really has just been able to create a big hand. He's got a Find a Friend for the Jolteon. So once again, I'm being threatened of being attacked on turn 2, and he will need a damage mod to knock out this Swirlix. It does have 60 HP, so my Swirlix can tank a hit if necessary. I refresh untap because I feel like I missed it, but I think I just missed the Find a Friend, so he shows me the Jolteon again. And then I go into my turn. I draw Brock's Grit, not great, and I draw nothing off the bug catcher. So I just gotta attach and pass and say, no, you don't have a damage mod. He does have 3 outs to a damage mod. He's got a Cross Transceiver. Oh no, he has more. He has an Order Bat too. So he had like 5 outs, and he did not have one in hand. So my Swirlix is going to survive, and so I get 1 more card off the top. He takes a look at my hand with Looker's Investigation and sees, yeah, you know what, that hand's bad enough. You can keep it, and he'll take a fresh 5. And then I think he just goes for an Evolving Thunder. Move some energy around with this Magius, and I hit a Calm Surge off the top. Now, my immediate thought is to go Calm Surge for Swoop Teleporter and do the same play I did in game 1. But partway through doing this, I realized, wait a minute, if I Swoop Teleporter, my Swablu's only have 50 HP. And so immediately as I get into this play, I'm like, wait, this does not work. And I go ahead and think about applying pressure myself with a Regigigas. So I go ahead and get a Ball Guy off of this Comp Search. And Ball Guy is going to allow me to get a Level Ball, a Pokeball, and a Quick Ball, which basically they're all going to just get me basics. So it really didn't matter. The only thing I can't use is a Level Ball because the Regigigas has 100 HP, but I'll get a Regigigas, a Shaman, and a Swablu for myself. The Swablu just set up for an Altaria play in the future, and the Shaman just switched the energy off the Swirlix and switch out of it and start wreaking havoc with Regigigas. Now Regigigas' first attack, which is the one I'm going to be able to use, is Drag Off, which is 3 for 30, and you can pick one of the bench Pokemon your opponent has and drag it up to the active and do the damage to it instead. And I recognize that this Lantern is going to be a big threat, so I drag off the Chinchou first. I'm threatening a knockout if he does not find the Lantern for next turn. He uses the Unknown Y to pull a Psychic Energy from the deck. And gonna think about his plays. He attaches a Speed Lightning to Chinchou to draw. Bird Keeper switches into our free retreat Jolteon. He finds the Lantern, protecting his Chinchou. And he'll move some energy around off the Mismagius onto a Jolteon. Sabrina's Gaze to shuffle away my Swablu, or my Altaria, so I'm in danger of like not having a Draco Melody play. And he just goes in with a Psychic Pulse. The Psychic Pulse will do 30 to my active and 10 to anything that has damage counters on it, so he'll take the KO on the Swirlix. I have an Erica, so we'll both draw 3 cards. I do find the Altaria off the Erica, and most of my plays in this deck, when I'm going to play Erica, I'm going to play Judge. I decide, I'm thinking about where I'm going to attach the energy. Do I want to swing in with Giga Hammer for 80? But the problem is this Magius resists me, so I just end up attaching to the Altaria, and I'm going to cause more chaos by dragging off. This time around, I'm going to drag off the Kirlia. I don't think that this was the right play, although I do threaten, since I just judged him, I threaten, okay, if this if this Ralts, I keep calling it Kirlia, if this Ralts does not evolve into Kirlia, which of course he plays an Order Pad right away for an Evo Incense, my play was to just kind of threaten his draw engine. He uses Unknown Y to pull an energy for the deck, and then Miss Magius to pull it up to the Ralts to retreat it, evolve into Kirlia, and start drawing some cards. He finds a Jolteon, and then with a Cross Transceiver, he gets Giovanni's Scheme, so his Evolving Thunder is going to hit me for 7 damage, and take the KO and spread 10 to the bench. Luckily, I still have an Altaria in play. And now that just means we're going to go for the Draco Melody. I'll bench a Celebi and attach to it, because Celebi's another great accelerator, and I'll play Training Center. Now, Training Center is going to buff both our Stage 1 and Stage 2's health. The trick here is that it allows my Altaria to survive an Evolving Thunder from Jolteon, because I am weak to Lightning. So he can't just return a knockout here. My Altaria is going to do a little tanking. This time I go for the Flygon because I'm a little bit behind, and I need to disrupt him to stay in the game. So I think Flygon is the safer dragon to pull out of the deck. He realizes that he can't kill my Altaria with Jolteon, but he can in fact kill it with Lantern. So he's going to bring up Lantern and go in with the Aqua Bolt once he moves the Holland's Electrode, which is a double Rainbow Energy, up with Miss Magius's Magical Drains. So he'll take the knockout with Aqua Bolt, which does a whole bunch of damage. On my top deck, I pull an Energy Restore, which is huge. This really just allows my Celebi to power itself up using Force Breath and an attached return. And then I'm just going to go for a Time Circle after I disrupt his hand with a Sand Flap. Now, Time Circle is a great play here because he has all evolved Pokemon in play, except for an Unknown Y, which only hits for 10 damage. And Time Circle prevents damage from Stage 1s and Stage 2s to Celebi. So he's going to have to find an alternate way through. My opponent then deep in the tank because Celebi does kind of present a problem for him. He's going to move some energy around and retreat the Lantern. And his trick he's going to do is he's going to undevelop the Jolteon into Eevee and then swing for 20 with a big lunge. Now this is going to be a great stall play for me because I have a bunch of energy in hand, and I'm going to be able to use Force Breath to power up my Flygon a little quicker. Since my opponent's at 5 cards in hand, I feel like, yeah, I can safely go ahead for a Sand Flap on myself to see some more. I don't see very much off that Sand Flap. So I'll just go for the Time Circle again. I do outrace this Eevee here because it's going to only do 20 to me, so I can tank another hit. And he just goes for another lunge. He doesn't really have it. I've got plenty of energy in hand. I kind of debate attaching energy because I don't want the Shaman to be prey to energy split from Lantern. So I'm just going to attach to the Flygon and flap myself. And take the KO with Time Circle. So my opponent still doesn't have a solution that is with a basic attacking Pokemon. So they're going to have to, once again, go for some cheeky EV hits to knock down my Celebi. He gets a Spark to power up the EV on the bench, and lunge for KO. And I'll come in with my big boy. Now here I pull a supporter off the deck. I'm always going to go in for a Sand Tomb for a KO. I've got a Volkner, and I don't really see anything in my deck that's like really standing out as something I want to take off the Volkner. I'm always going to take the Lightning Energy, but I end up taking the reserve ticket so I can stack the top of my deck with a Olympia. And the Olympia, I'm basically feeling at this point in the game, my opponent's at 2 prizes left and I have 5. I don't have time to go for another Draco Melody. This flag has to last me the whole game. And I've got a Chatot in hand to be able to reuse an Olympia. So I'm just going to stack the deck with an Olympia right now. So I'll go ahead and Sand Flap my opponent and then Sand Tomb for the knockout. My opponent, calculating the chance of knocking out this Flygon, right now has effectively 160 HP. The Lantern is not doing anywhere near enough damage, even with some damage buffs and the Stadium Bounce. So they're just going to go for a conservative, but still very threatening Aqua Bolt for 80 damage. I pull the Olympia off the top, but I did pull a Spark off the prizes. And so what this allows me to do is do a really sneaky play that my opponent probably didn't expect. I'm going to accelerate a Lightning to the bench Shaman, attach Grass for turn. My opponent initially thinking, oh great, that's a great Energy Split target, but then he realizes that Shaman is basically a direct counter to Energy Split, because it heals 30 damage from anything that has any energy attached. So the Shaman is a real threat that they'll have to deal with. I'll Sand Flap my opponent and then Energy Bloom to heal myself for 30. Drawing a couple cards, just trying to see some options, attaching a Psychic to the Kirlia for a potential slap play, and then he just has to go for the Aqua Bolt for KO, kind of respecting that the Shaman is going to present a real problem, and I'm down to just my final guy here with Flygon. But what I do here is really cool. I end up going with a Double Gust on the Eevee, and use Chatot's Lucky Match on Volkner to get Windstorm, and Windstorm will get rid of the Training Center and the Bodybuilding Dumbbells. That will knock out the Lantern, because the Lantern had 90 damage on it before the Stadium and the Tool were discarded. And so this way I'm able to take a 2-prize turn, and my opponent doesn't really have a threat on board that's dangerous to me. The Mismagius and Kirlia both top out at 30 damage. And I have 80 health remaining. So I'm putting myself in a really good position to just tank the whole rest of the way. With Flygon, I still have Olympia in hand. And from this point, I'm in a really great position. And my opponent recognizes I think it's very over. Yeah, I go ahead and Sand Flap him to disrupt, and then go for the Sand Tomb for the knockout. And it's now 2 prizes to 1. Kirlia to draw a couple cards for my opponent. They do find a Versus Seeker for Giovanni Scheme to pump the damage up to 50 on the Psychic Pulse, but that's not going to be enough, because I will just go ahead and Olympia. I'm also attaching to this Chatot at this point, because if I'm able to find a Swoop Teleporter, I'm able to swoop it into something that maybe can potentially attack. Additionally, I can't knock out the Mismagius this turn. I am only doing 80 damage. And so my plan is probably to go ahead and glide for 30, reduce down by 20 for the last 10 damage on this Mismagius. The cool thing with Sand Tomb, like we saw in round 1, is that it prevents the Pokemon it hits from retreating. So this Mismagius is going to be stuck here and is going to be forced to be knocked out next turn. I'm thinking a lot here because I'm really thinking about like how I can get Regigigas back into play, but I need to find Brock's Grid at some point and then Swoop Teleporter, so it's a little bit far off right now. But I'm just going to go ahead and retreat out of the Chatot with the Floatstone and go for Sand Tomb. And I've locked the Mismagius in the active with 8 damage on it. It can only do 3 to me. And my opponent recognizes that is a good game. So, once again, I think the really cool thing that I found in this round was that Volkner, in both of my first 2 rounds, Volkner has been the game-winning play. In round 1, where I Volkner to get a Floatstone so that the Cycler Bronzong can't damage me anymore, or the Fortress can't damage me anymore. I think it was Fortress. In this game, Volknering for the Windstorm to knock out my opponent's tools. I do think I'm really proud of taking that Windstorm very early in the draft. I took it as the 3rd pick overall that I had, because I recognize Windstorm is not a card that most decks are running right now. So that does give me a real advantage in the Tool and Stadium game. I do think that my play in the first 2 games was not great. I got really lucky game 1 because I kind of disrespected my opponent's board state and just lucked out because they had no Jolteons. And then in game 2, I disrespected them again, kind of, and I got punished for it because my Celebi got knocked out. Should I have benched a couple other Pokemon in both those games? Yes. Did it work out in one? Yeah. Did it work out in the other? No. So it kind of balanced out. But I think in game 3, it really showed like what my deck is capable of, and I came back from really down. I think it was 2 prizes to 5 or 2 prizes to 6. So it really shows the potential. Once my guys get on the board, they stick on the board, and it was really cool to see Flygon just basically go the distance there. But so we're 2-0 so far through 2 rounds, and looking forward to rounds 3. CoinFlip Cube once again showing why it's one of my favorites. There's just been some really cool decks and really cool interactions. So looking forward to more fun, and we'll catch you next week for round 3.